Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Clay breathed into life. 10-8-10. Recently I read an article that I found fascinating. I've always liked science because it solves so many interesting questions for me. These experimenters decided to try something interesting because one of the problems that they had with the idea of how did amino acids and lipids decide to get together and be friends and create the first life. And they had trouble because a lot of times the theories involved large bodies of water and there wouldn't have been any cohesive substance to get them to be close enough to decide to bond. Well, recently a speculation was that clay might have been the matrix where the lipids and the amino acids that later became life could be in a fixed location that they might have bonded and created the first proteins and cell walls that led to life later. Well, I think this is very interesting because sometimes when there is a myth or a parable or a written thing from the past, sometimes God was inspiring what was said. Not all the time, because we're always putting our own twist on things, but I think in this particular case we may have been onto something. But instead of it just being dust, maybe it was clay. There are a couple of verses I'd like to read. First one is Reconcile Our Gospel of Thomas, verse 66. Jesus said, "Show me the stone that the builders cast aside. That one is the capstone. Without it, the arch will fail." And then, of course, there's Genesis. Genesis 2:7. Let's see here. "Then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." It's possible that God works through us to explain nature, and it isn't until we can actually understand what's being said that we can put it into the proper context. I think that this may fall into the category of science is finally catching up to the inspiration that happened and was written down in Genesis. I think that it is important for us to always take anything that a human being writes down with a grain of salt, because we always put our own twist on things. However, if it is something that is inspired by God, the insight, the information, the idea, the poetry might actually be describing something that we just don't have any clue of yet, and maybe some future generation will go, "Oh, that's what it's all about." And the idea that God breathed life into a human being, I think that God breathed life into all creatures, and maybe into the clay when the lipids and the proteins were trying to form together into a cell wall. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Eliza.